G'day curd nerds, today we're going to be making dry jack. Now dry jack is a cheese from California in the United States, and it was invented around 1915 when an oversupply of Monterey Jack was first rubbed with oil and soot and pepper. Yes, soot, as in like ash that we use in cheese making today. However, it took one smart gentleman to go and use cocoa powder and pepper and oil instead of using the ash, and thus created dry jack. Now, dry jack is usually aged between 6 months and 1 year. However, because I've made a smaller version of dry jack, only being about a kilogram in weight, I've decided only to age it for about 3 months. So, follow me along as we make dry jack cheese. So begin by sanitizing all of your equipment and laying it on a clean tea towel. The ingredients for dry jack are 10 litres or 2.5 gallons of cow's milk, pasteurised and unhomogenised, 1/8 of a teaspoon of MA 4000 series culture, half a teaspoon or 2.5 millilitres of single strength liquid rennet. I'm using IMCU 200. That has been diluted in 60 millilitres or quarter of a cup of non-chlorinated water. Half a teaspoon or 2.5 millilitres of calcium chloride if you're using pasteurised milk. That's also diluted in quarter of a cup of non-chlorinated water. 2.5% salt by weight of curds, 1.5 to 2 tablespoons of cocoa powder, 1 teaspoon of white pepper, and 2 tablespoons of olive oil. So using a water bath and a sous vide, heat your milk up to 33 degrees Celsius or 92 degrees Fahrenheit. Once it's reached the target temperature, just make sure you check it there. We're now going to add the starter cultures. Now to sprinkle the starter culture over the surface of the milk. So cover the milk and allow it to rehydrate for 5 minutes. So 5 minutes later, just stir the starter cultures into the milk. Just do that for about a minute. Just cover again and allow the milk to ripen for 45 minutes. So after 45 minutes, just give it a quick stir. And we're going to add in the calcium chloride solution. Just give that a stir for about a minute. And then we're going to add the rennet solution. There we go, and stir for no more than 1 minute. Just still the milk and cover, and then we're going to allow the milk to sit for 40 minutes. This is the coagulation time. So after 40 minutes, check for a clean break. Just use my knife, turn it 45 degrees, and there we go. Nice clean split. Lovely. Just using my curd harp to cut the curds into 1/2 inch or 1.25 centimeter cubes, just doing the horizontals there, and then using my curd knife to do the vertical cuts, giving us the right size cubes. There we go, all done. So just cover that and wait 5 minutes for the whey to rise and for the curds to heal. You'll see that the curds have shrunk a little bit and have expelled some whey. Just gently give them a stir. And if there are some pieces that are quite large, just use a whisk in an up and down motion and cut them just a little bit smaller. Don't overdo this or you'll get curds that are way too small. So now we're going to slowly heat to 39 degrees Celsius or 102 Fahrenheit over the period of 45 minutes. Now I found that it took my sous vide this long to heat the curds up to the new target temperature. And once it is heated, you'll see those shrunk down to about navy bean size. Then grab a handful of curds and gently squeeze. And if they form a ball and break easily apart with your thumb, they are cooked enough. Yep, they're holding together and they break easily apart. Perfect. So allow the curds to rest for 5 minutes where they'll sink to the bottom. So 5 minutes later. So now we're going to take a sieve and a ladle and remove the whey until just above the curd level. So you can keep this whey, and I'll be making a video very soon called 15 ways with whey, but I had enough and I didn't need it. So as the pot starts to float in the water bath, you can just remove the water. You don't need to maintain the temperature anymore. So we're removing the food for the culture, so this cheese will have a lower acidity than, say, normal Monterey Jack. So stir the curds to just break up the curd mass before we add in cool water to bring the temperature of the curds down to 30 degrees Celsius or 86 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, the Melbourne water that I'm using is some of the best in the world. It is not hard, but if your tap water is hard or not safe to drink, then use filtered water or pure water. So not quite at the temperature yet, just add a little bit more and test. And do that until you've reached the new target temperature of 30 degrees Celsius. So once it's cooled, stir the curds for 15 minutes. The curds will shrink a little bit more during this small stirring phase. So once the 15 minutes have elapsed, we're just going to cover those and we're going to allow the curds to rest and sink to the bottom for 5 minutes. So using your ladle and your sieve again, just remove the washing water or whey that's left down to the level of the curds again. This just makes it easier to drain the curds in the next step. So just grab a tight weave butter muslin and place that over your colander. I'm just swapping places there. Now we're going to drain the curds through the butter muslin. Just pour that all in there, getting little bits out of the pot. Now this drains fairly quickly. Now grab a scale and just set that up and then just squeeze the curd mass to get rid of most of the whey. Just gently squeeze it, it comes out. This is because we're going to weigh the curds. Now I'm using a silver bowl there that's been sanitized. Just tip the curds into it and we're going to weigh them for salting. So my curds weighed 1,822 grams or 1.8 kilos, which equals about 4 pounds. So 2.5% of salt, is about 45 grams. So I've just weighed out the salt there, ready for the next step. So I'm going to put the curds back into the pot. Makes it easier to salt. Tip out any excess whey. I know that was part of the weight, but it's no big deal. Now mix in the salt through the curds. Just mix it through thoroughly. The curds may stick together a little bit. Break those up with your hands. There we go, all fairly loose. Lovely. So I'm going to transfer the salted curds back into the butter muslin lined colander. And now we're going to form a ball of curds and place it on a board. So we're trying to get it as ball shaped as possible. Just twisting it a little bit there, just to get rid of some more whey. Make sure the knot is in the middle of the ball. Now we're going to tie the curd bag with some string or jute and cut off the excess. And now we're going to fan out the excess butter muslin over the cheese so that the knot is in the center of the cheese, not to one side. So we'll place a second board on top of the curd bag. And we're going to apply some weight to that now. Now using 4 kilogram, I'm using 4 litres of water on a pot, or 8 pounds 13 ounces. I'm going to press that for 2 hours. So after the 2 hours, I've then increased the weight to 16 kilograms or 35 pounds for 12 hours. Make sure you don't turn the cheese over. The knot always stays on the top of the curd bag. So you can leave this overnight if you're running short on time. Just remove the weight once that's finished. And we're going to untie the knot. There's our formed cheese. This was a little tricky because I think I cut the ends a little bit too close to the top of the bag. And remove the cheese from the cloth. You'll see it's got a lovely belly button now. A little bit of hair on there, get that off. So place down 2 mats, and depending on the size of your cheese, of course, on a board. And this is where we're going to allow it to air dry. Yes, it is a nice little belly button in your cheese. So we're going to air dry that at room temperature for 5 to 10 days until the surface is dry to touch. And it must be dry, but it can't crack. Don't let it crack. You've gone too far. Make sure you turn it daily and rub off any mould that you see there with a dry cloth. So that's dry enough for me and no mould on it. Now we're going to mix up the rub. Add 1.5 or 2 tablespoons of cocoa powder. This is unsweetened cocoa powder to a mixing bowl. And then we're going to add the 1 teaspoon of white pepper. I choose white pepper because that's what I had at hand. You can use black pepper, but it has to be finely ground. Just mix those 2 powders together. And we're going to now add the olive oil. Now I use 2 tablespoons. I probably could have got away with 1.5. And then mix that well together because it was a bit runny. And you'll see that in a second. So mix it until you get a smooth paste. And there we go. No lumps from the cocoa powder. Nice and smooth. So now we're going to get messy, and we're going to tip a bit onto the surface of the cheese and rub it over until you get into every single nook and cranny. This is going to keep the mould off the cheese as it matures. Then turn it over and do it some more. It's like finger painting, it's lovely. There we go. Once you've got an even coating on the surface of the cheese, just make sure to save what's left of the rub for later applications. So let this initial coat dry, but then reapply the rub after 2 to 3 days. You may need to add a little bit more cocoa powder into the olive oil mixture to darken it up a bit. And you can see there I've done both sides, and it is a lot darker than it was before. Now you may choose to put 2 or 3 coats. That usually suffices, enough to protect the cheese. So we're going to transfer to the cheese fridge and mature for 3 to 6 months at 13 degrees Celsius or 55 Fahrenheit at 85% relative humidity. You can do this in a ripening box, or your cheese fridge can be humid enough. Turn weekly. Now back to Gav for more commentary. So there you have it. That's how you make dry jack. Here's my dry jack. Still, this is after about a week in the cheese fridge. No mould on it yet. And same on the other side. It's dried out a fair bit. Probably could do with another rub. But we'll see how that goes. I'll make sure that there's no oil or any build up there. But I don't think that's going to happen. So it's drying out quite well. So hence the name Dry Jack. Well, g'day curd nerds. Here's a quick update on the dry jack that I've been making. So this is the dry jack at 1 month. It's got a little bit of mould on it on both sides, but this seems to happen on a weekly basis. I cleaned it off at about the 2-week mark, but didn't rub any more cocoa powder and olive oil onto it. So I decided at the 1 month mark it needed another coat just to keep those moulds at bay. Now, I haven't had this in a ripening box, it's just been in the cheese cave. And you can see there with a dry cloth, I'm just rubbing off any mould that I can see there. There's a little bit of Penicillium roqueforti, which is prevalent in my cheese fridge anyway. Just cleaning out the belly button there, getting any of the mould out. I just give the board a bit of a wipe. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to make up another of the cocoa powder olive oil mixture and give it one final coating before it finishes maturing. So a couple of tablespoons of just plain cocoa powder and enough olive oil just to make it into a very thick, smooth paste. So it's about two tablespoons roughly, and you can see there that it's made a nice thick smooth paste. There we go. So there is one dry spot where the rub has come off, and I don't know what the reason was, but you can see where the rub has come off, there's a bit of a crack there. But on the rest of the cheese, there are no cracks whatsoever, so the dry rub is working very well to prevent the cheese from drying out. So I'm very happy with that. Same goes on the other side. There are no cracks in the rind of the cheese. There is one little dry spot down in the corner there, but that's okay. There's no cracks on it. So I'm just going to apply the rub again. I didn't put any pepper in the rub this time. I did in the first time, but I didn't have any cracked pepper. So just using the cocoa powder and the olive oil, and just paint that on with your hand. Doesn't have to be fancy, just as a nice even layer, and any exposed parts of the rind, just recoat that again. So popping the cheese back onto another mat that has been sanitized, just pop that on. I'm just flipping that over, and then apply the rest of the rub onto the cheese. So I'm getting all the edges there, all of those exposed bits. There was only one really, but yeah, filled it out. So nice even coating. Make sure I'm not filling up the belly button too much of the cheese. So just make sure that it just has a lovely even coating. There we go, perfect. So I'm going to pop it back into the cheese fridge now at 13 degrees Celsius, 80% humidity. So dry jack was, or is, a lovely looking cheese. Some people say it looks like a rhinoceros's butthole, but that aside, it's a good looking cheese. It still has a fairly good coating of the rub on it, which I'm a little bit surprised seeing how much I've had to clean this cheese up. But let me show you, before we start the taste test, how I cleaned this cheese up just before we started the taste test. So here we have the cheese fresh out of the cheese cave. Now some of you may be thinking, oh my goodness, that's not good. Well, it's just mould. Now, the mould hasn't penetrated the cheese, it is just on the surface of the cheese. Now I'm using a soft nail brush, and don't forget to wear a mask when you do this. Just a soft nail brush, and I'm just brushing the surface of the cheese. Now a little bit of the rub has come off, but that's okay. There's no problems with that whatsoever, especially when we're just about to taste the cheese. So I'm getting into the little belly button space, making sure that all of the dry mould that has grown on the outside has been removed. Nice and easy. And there you go, there's an after shot, not a skerrick of blue mould on the cheese, top or bottom. Anyway, back to Gav. So as you can see, a nice soft nail brush works very well in cleaning up cheeses like this. It had some surface mould, nothing has gone into the cheese. There are no cracks in the cheese whatsoever, which is absolutely fantastic. Very happy with that. The cheese is firm, as you would expect, seeing it's called dry jack, but it still has some moisture. You can feel it. It's not damp. It just feels like it's not totally dry, rock hard sort of cheese. So without further ado, let's just cut into it and see what it tastes like. From all reports that I've read on the internet, it is more of a grating cheese than anything else. So let's try this out. That cut fairly well. Let's bring it along a little bit. Right. Did we get all the way through? No, not yet. There we go. Right, and what we have is a lovely looking cheese. Oh, smells nice too. Smells like a strong cheddary, parmesan-y sort of smell. So that is really cool. I'm just cut it into quarters. And as far as the rind goes, yeah, sure, there is some rind. It doesn't dry out any more in the middle than it has in the thicker part of the cheese. But yeah, it has variable thicknesses. Because remember, it was in a cheesecloth, and that was how we pressed it. So yeah, I think it's turned out very well so far. Cocoa powder, still a little bit coming off on my hands, but that's okay. We have a tea towel to fix all that. And the cheese looks pretty good. So, like I said, it looks a nice colour on the inside. Well, it's a bit yellowish, which is good. So let's just put these bits aside. And we will cut a slice or two. And we'll give it a taste. Now, there are some small mechanical holes. I would expect that because it's not pressed under pressure. Well, not a lot of pressure anyway. So there's no air bubbles or anything like that. But yeah, it's all mechanical and very small. So not late blown or anything like that, which is good. So let's try some of this cheese. It bends and it snaps, as you expect in a dry cheese. This is 2.5 months old. I could have aged it out to 3. It's a very small cheese. These cheeses typically age out, if they're a lot bigger, out to 6 to 12 months to be even drier. But I didn't want it to dry too much. It wasn't cracking in the cheese fridge. I just had it on a pine board in the cheese fridge. The humidity in the cheese fridge was about 80% humidity. Just naturally all by itself. I didn't use a ripening box or anything like that. And it seems to work out all right. So let's try it, shall we? It's got a lovely umami flavour. Bit like, well, it's a well-aged, tastes like a well-aged cheddar slash, and has some notes of a harder Italian cheese as well. Good table cheese, this one. That is very nice. I didn't know what to expect. I'll try some of the outer rind. That is very nice. Definitely dry than a cheese I would normally have. It's grainy as well. You can taste the graininess. No crystals or anything like that. It's not aged long enough. Little bit of, you can't really taste the rub. You can't taste the cocoa powder or anything like that. But yeah, slight pepperiness, because we did use pepper in the rub as well. So I used some white pepper and the cocoa powder in the first initial rub. Not much of a peppery hit at all, but a nice all-round cheese that people really enjoy, probably because of its unique appearance, but the flavour is just lovely. I could eat this all day. It's really nice. Yeah, that is really good. Oh. So, it would, I think, if you grated it, it would be equally as good. A nice burst of flavour there because you got more surface area. But as it stands, you know, I think it's a great cheese. So if you haven't made dry jack yet, I definitely would recommend that you give it a go. It's a delicious little cheese, simple enough. The rubbing was a little bit more extra work, and brushing off the any moulds that formed on the rind of the cheese, but no real issues really. It was kind of like set and forget. Every week or so I just gave it a brush. It was a dry brush. There was no extra moisture added. I didn't use a brine solution or anything like that, because the mould only grew on the surface of the cocoa powder, on the surface of the rub. It didn't go into the cheese. So perfect for, you know, easy affinage and that sort of thing. What I'm going to do, I'm going to consume these two bits now, and I'm going to vacuum pack this half here, and we'll see if that ages out any further over the next, you know, 3 to 6 to, you know, year, and see if it develops further in flavour. I don't really want to mature it without some sort of protection now. I don't think, I do think that it will start to crack sooner rather than later. But the moisture content's really good. It's not moist. It's certainly a little bit drier than a cheddar, but a little bit moister than a Parmesan, if that makes sense. So in the middle there, with a nice little flavour profile. So give dry jack a try. It's well worth it. It's a good cheese to make. So perfect. Really like it. Let me know down in the comment if you tried dry jack before, or if you've made it yourself and what the result was. I think this is a great little recipe. I wouldn't change it any way, shape or form. I think it stands on its own. And yeah, it's it's a good cheese. It's a good cheese. I love it. If you like the content, don't forget to give it a thumbs up or a like down just below there. And if you want to see more content, or you want to financially support the channel, you can do so by hitting the join button down below, or there is a link to my Patreon page in the video description. Well, thank you for watching, Curd Nerds, and I'll see you next time.